do and won't. I mean, I just don't see things working out in a way where inflation can stop. I think that there's one of two things that can happen, and we talk about it every morning. I mean, every Wednesday on the Morning Constitutional. I talk about it on my show. I talk about it with anyone who will listen. Oh, hold on a sec. I'm getting told that there's no sound. I'm broadcasting this also. Yeah, no, I'm of course. I'm just trying to figure out why they're not hearing you. So, oh, of course. Of course.
sources of natural gas and crude oil. It's really a sad state of affairs that Europe has found itself in, a self inflicted state of affairs. Obviously, in Russia, natural gas and crude oil are very affordable by any standard. So it's really politics that's made sources
Western
of
Europe in
natural gas,
particular.
but really not just Western Europe. It's the EU and NATO. It's made these countries have this absurdly high series of energy costs, and that certainly does look like it's going to turn around anytime soon. The Russians have discovered they can sell their wares to many developing economies. So even after the war in the Ukraine ends, it's not like there's some big incentive for Russia, which has state owned, by the way. It has state owned energy companies. So it's literally the government running this. It's not that the government is dictating to private actors what they can do, even though that does happen to a certain degree. But Russia does have state owned energy companies that literally extract natural resources from the ground themselves. And
I mean, that's not uncommon though.
no, it's not.
Most countries have
Mhm.
what's it called? They have state-run oil companies, or the state runs the oil company and leases it, to a private industry, but they still have to, they still have to conform to every state regulation. Like that's not uncommon. In fact, it's very rare. Like the U.S. and Canada, I think, are really the only two that just leave it to private industry.
I would say that Europe does not. I don't know how strong
Well,
the
Europe doesn't have a
government.
lot of oil.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. How strong the government could be in the oil. Europe has to, unless you're talking about Scotland, in which case that's not publicly owned. But Europe has to import the continental Europe. It's natural gas and oil, generally speaking. So it's really an interesting situation there. How they poked the Russian bear in the eye, and now they're up the creek as a result of that. And obviously, energy costs in the UK are soaring because even though the UK has its own sources of oil in Scotland, it's having to export its oil to Europe to compensate for the loss from the Russian marketplace, and that has sent prices in the UK up tremendously. So the UK, despite, like I said, having its own source of oil, is not in a great position at all. It's really something that is this crisis affects many different places in Europe.
Yeah, but the thing is, I've given up even trying to figure out why. And to tell you the truth, I don't even really care. But Europe has seems to have decided a while ago that suicide is their thing. Like they want to make their countries irrelevant and eventually fade away. And instead of listening to people who are saying this isn't okay or these are the problems that are there, they just censor or shut down any conversation about anything that gets in the way of this national suicide that they're all committing. Like they know their birth rates are so low. They like the only reason their birth rates register at all is because of all the Muslims that have been coming in over the last 20 years. Otherwise they would basically have no birth rate. It would be like within the margin of error, as we like to say. But at the same time, if you say like, okay, well, we now have a birth rate because we're importing all these people from the third world, but look at all the crime we're importing, look at all the problems we're importing. The tax base has not expanded like we were told it would from bringing in all these migrants. Blah 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 blah. They'll just throw you in jail for having the nerve to say it, as opposed to actually taking what you have to say into account. Like they push abortion on demand, and again, not that's a bad thing sometimes, but Europe just doesn't, because of the way that they act. We can't take their policies to a be something to either emulate or not or try to figure out, and we definitely can't take it into account as to like what should we do about the future. It looks like Europe is doing this because, as I said, Europe is on a suicide mission, and if someone's determined to kill themselves, they're gonna do it. So I think that we just have to like kind of watch Europe with sadness as they go away.
And I'll just throw in something here. Speaking of thinking of Europe, has made me think of something I forgot to say. What is the theme song for the new show? It's from the Brandenburg Concerto, Allegro from the Brandenburg Concerto. I'm sorry I mispronounced that, but anyway, in case anyone is wondering, so talking about Europe, it seems to me that the European Union definitely does not think it's offing itself. It is powered by the common market between the various member states, and there are some non-member states that have access to the common market. And the EU's power, needless to say, is financial. Without that common market, it would fold tomorrow. So the people who are running the EU seem to think that they're doing something for the long run by exerting as much financial power as possible. If one looks at how they sanction countries like Hungary or Poland for various policies that the government in each of those places promotes. The EU is all about money, but at the same time, you say that it's destroying itself over the long run. Obviously, that pertains to economics. Anything to say about the situation?
So someone in the chat just said, what was I want to quote it right? Mass immigration is rooted in revenge against white people, no doubt about it. I really don't think it is. I don't think it's that deep. That's why I don't think that people have sat around, or at least a sizable enough majority has sat around and said to themselves, you know what the best thing to do would be right now? Let's exterminate white people. Well, how do you want to do that? Let's allow the entire third world to float over from Africa and the Middle East on bathtubs and come in through our border, because sooner or later they'll kill all the white people. I don't think it's that in depth. I think it's that Europeans especially, and we've seen this in every country that Europeans have been through. We've seen so much whatever. They just seem to think that labor is something that they can just exploit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I don't know how to say it better than that. I'm not talking like in a commie way. I'm saying they had apartheid in South Africa. Instead of just telling I forgot what the blacks are called there. But instead of just telling them like, sayonara, here's your country, we'll stay in our country. You do you, we'll do us. Here's a fence on the border, which they tried to kind of do with apartheid. They just set up 3 separate areas for 3 different peoples. They couldn't stop bringing them over for work. And in a sense, it was considered like an empathetic, charitable thing. They were like, well, these people are starving. They don't have any possessions. Let's bring them over and make them our servants. And, they can drive our cars and stuff like that. And then we can feel good about that. Well, if history is any example, that doesn't last. Sooner or later, that class of people will get their rights one way or the other. They'll either take over your country, or they'll meld into your country. Like, I mean, blacks here. The Europeans brought them over as slaves. That's nothing controversial about that. It's true, But when things got crazy, they either said, let's let the slaves go, or whatever. Europe, for some reason, just can't get over this cheap labor thing, and I understand why, because they have these socialist policies that make it so difficult to hire a native European, between the breaks that they have to give them, between the time off that they have to give them, between the exorbitant salaries and the social welfare benefits. These are all things they have to give to European workers, and they're not all that productive. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you have all these illegals running around and all these immigrants, they can basically give them welfare and let them work under the table, or let them work, whatever, and it's easier for them. But the what happens as a result is the destruction of their societies. And for some reason, even though this plays over and over and over again, they keep doing it.
Europe is in a very bad situation in a host of ways, and the same goes for the U.S. and Canada. It's a terrible situation, but there it is, a very multifaceted one as well. Now, Halsey, when it comes to the economy, one interesting thing is that people, many people, not all, in the realm of economic predictions, do think there's going to be a recession this year, but they don't necessarily think that the job market's going to dry up. How is that, in your opinion?
Number one, the job market, a lot of people say that we're basically at full employment, right? And yet, even though we're at full employment, everybody's hiring. If you go to any minimum wage job in the country, they're hiring. Go to any McDonald's, go to any Wawa, go to any supermarket, they're hiring. So wait a minute, if we're at full employment, why is it that so many people are dying for work? Mm-hmm. Or workers, I might say. Not to mention, the last I checked, and this was last year, so the number might have changed a little bit, but it's been pretty steady for years now. There are 1 million skilled labor positions in this country that there's no one to fill. Mm-hmm. That like certain machinists and factory workers, they can't fill them because no one has the experience to do it, and they can't hire them as apprentices because it pays crap, and you can't people don't consider the ability to learn a trade as being a fair enough trade-off to make $7 an hour. Mm-hmm. Now, why is that? Because we do this really magical thing with the employment number. When someone stops looking for work, we just take them out of the equation because they're not unemployed. They're not looking for work. So if someone's on welfare, they're not looking for work. And as we've increased the welfare state, less and less people are looking for work. Also, a lot of people are working in the gig economy and not really reporting it. Like, they're kind of reporting it, but to them, they're employed. To the government, they're just kind of doing odd jobs to make ends meet. Mm-hmm. And at this point, will it hurt the job market? Probably not, because the job market already basically sucks. And because of inflation, more and more people are starting to pay more. So will tech lay off people? Sure. But who are they going to lay off? They're going to lay off all the EB-5 immigrants that, or what is it, H-1B? I forgot which one. H-1B.
H-1B.
They'll just lay them off and send them back to India. They'll lay off some Americans too, but they're not going to put their necks out to keep a bunch of Indians here that they have to be financially responsible for, if there's no work for them. And also, a lot of the tech companies, yes, they needed 5,000 workers when they went from being a website where you could throw fake sheep at each other to now Facebook is Facebook. They don't need that many programmers anymore. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they didn't want to just, they're publicly traded companies. They don't want to just lay off 2,000 people because they're afraid it makes the stock plunge because everyone thinks they're in trouble. The truth is they don't need them anymore. So yeah, will a lot of tech people get laid off? Sure. But the question is, what will they do about it? They'll collect unemployment for a year or two. They might take some side gigs if they can, maybe, some temporary work. But then they'll either go back to what they were doing in a couple years from now, or they'll find something else.
I think, and this brings up a very interesting question. It has been thought for some time that the safest realm of employment one can enter has to do with information technology, computers. And people get degrees in this, expecting that they will have a guaranteed job. And obviously, with layoffs in the tech sector, which are, it's not just something that's now coming into view, it's been going on for a little while, but it probably is going to accelerate. Uh, do you think that this will make it seem as to people who are going into college as such that IT is no longer this guaranteed source of income that can weather any economic storm? Do you think that the prestige and general attractiveness of the IT field will go downhill because of the layoffs, or do you think that this is just something that will be thought of as a blemish on an otherwise spotless record?
Well, there's a lot to unpack with what you just said.
Mhm.
Number one, don't get me started on economics. You'll never shut me up. Number one, it's not that these people have no place to go. We need the programmers. We wouldn't be importing half of India to this country to serve as programmers if we had enough. We don't. Even with the layoffs. Now the difference is that job, like, I mean, I'm sure you've seen the videos on Twitter and all that where someone's like, "Oh, I'm coming to my day at work at Twitter. I showed
Oh
up,
yes.
I had a cup of coffee, I ate my free breakfast, I took a nap, I did some yoga, I played volleyball, I had a meeting, then I had some wine, then I sunbathed." Those days are going to be over.
Sure.
Those days where you get a job and you don't have to do that much and you get all this shit paid for and a phenomenal salary because they need you really that bad, those days will be over. Now, will they come back when the economy comes back? If it comes back, maybe. But for now, there's no reason. Now, a lot of people like to say that it was because what's it called? Because tech companies, the kids are pussies that they're hiring and they need to have like wine jugs and free lunch and all of that. That's not why they do it. They do it because those are areas of compensation that they don't have to pay money that they'll be taxed on for. When you provide benefits to your employees, those are deductible from your taxes and you don't pay taxes on it. Whereas when you pay people salary, that you pay taxes on that. You pay part of Social Security, you pay a lot of stuff. You know, I don't know, Shogun, I don't know where you're getting that from. I'm telling you, there's lots of programmers that want work. And they'll keep getting work. And the companies will keep providing a lot of the stuff that you're talking about. It'll just be that you're going to notice a lot of people are going to go to more boring jobs, smaller companies that either don't pay as well but have good like investment options, or they're going to try to, hang out their shingle and do it on their own. But I don't think that's an issue. I think how to get into this without really going off on a tangent. I think what you're seeing, and maybe this is because I'm biased on this one, just so you know, I'm announcing that right from the beginning.
Mhm.
What you're seeing the end of more and more and more, and will continue to, is the end of middle management. Okay? Is that a lot of companies have realized that having 19 supervisors for 100 employees is kind of pointless. It may have had a point when everybody sat around and you brainstormed together, then you sent everybody back to their computers to do their work, and then you put everything in a repository, and then everybody kind of looked at it and you compiled it into one report and then submitted it to manager. That's computers have made things too easy. You don't have to do that anymore. Now when the boss wants to see what everyone's doing, they just email him directly. And they don't have to put it into a formal report. They just say, "This is what we're thinking."
Mhm.
So what you're seeing is, and this is really going to kick the Zoomers and the baby boomers, I mean the millennials, in the face pretty hard. They were told every day of their lives that if you get a college degree, you're on your way to the big leagues. That's how you make more money. That's how you have a family. That's how you own a home and drive nice cars and all of that. It's never had anything to do with the degree. The degree has always symbolized that you're on a higher rung of society. Either you come from money, which a lot of times is the type of attitude that high paying jobs want. You're insanely smart, which again, high paying jobs want. Or you're just incredibly determined to do well, to succeed. So even if you're not that naturally talented, you're willing to put in the work to get there. Now that everybody goes to college, like when you apply to Starbucks, they probably ask you if you have a college degree and would probably rather hire college degrees. So you're seeing that those middle managers who don't do anything in the first place, they're just there to supervise everybody else, they're going the way of the dodo. And when they put out their resume, like I have, 20 years experience in management at a Fortune 500 company, the hiring managers are looking at those and going, okay, that's nice. Next. Like they don't want someone with 20 years management experience because they know that's 20 years of garbage where they weren't actually working.
Mhm. So I think there's something I want to get into that, but before I do, what do you suppose the market will look like, the job market during the years to come? Do you think that's going to be something which relies more and more on gig work, which you were talking about, or do you think there will still be more traditional employment? How do you think things are going to develop?
I think that gig work is going to supplement people changing careers and people changing industries. Like if you're a useless manager or if you're in a job generally where you're not going to be rehired somewhere else, like your experience doesn't amount to shit,
Hmm.
right? You either have two choices. You could go to another boring dead end company where you'll start at the bottom and do the grunt work to get yourself to middle management and then get fired before you get there because they don't want middle management anymore. You could do that. Or you can start looking into a career in something else. But it's very, very hard to get somewhere else when you're not drawing a paycheck. And unemployment isn't much, and it doesn't last that long. So, how do you get there? You supplement your change of careers with gig work. Like you'll learn to be a welder, but while you're getting some experience and while you're getting into a union, while you're getting the jobs, you'll work at Uber 4 nights a week
Mhm.
just to make enough money to pay the rent, buy some food, maybe go out once or twice, get some beer. Like those are what you'll do. But once you make it into the new career, you're not going to have to worry about that anymore because no one's ever going to not need welders. No one's ever going to not need plumbers. Like getting into these things, as long as you get the experience to get yourself a job. I've been telling a lot of people about this too. My father was a truck driver his whole career till he retired, right? He still gets calls all like at least 5 or 6 a day, and because we have the same name, like I get a lot of them
Uh,
too, right?
mhm.
Trucking companies are offering like 20, $30,000 signing bonuses. If you don't have your CDL license, they'll pay for you to get it. And you're making if you drive because you have to drive. I think it's 8 on or 10 on, 8 off. So for every 10 hours you drive, you got to rest for 8.
Uh,
By law. Um, as long as you're willing to put in that schedule of 10 on, 8 off, 10 on, 8 off, whatever, they're making without the signing bonus 160, $170,000 a year,
wow.
and that's to start. That's not for experience. That's to start. And I say to them, I'm like, wow, that's astounding. Like, so you're saying the first year because of the signing bonus, people are making 180, $190,000 a year. He says, yeah, you don't understand. We're short in the industry something like 600,000 truckers that they need. That and it's not like that those people don't want to work. They don't exist. They
Mhm.
need 600,000 new Americans that have ultra test. I'm telling you that I had didn't. If I just heard it from one company, then I would have said, yeah, that sounds a little high. They're probably bullshitting you. But what I'm saying is I heard it from multiple companies, and the reason being is if you're working for a company and making an hourly wage, 10 on and 8 off over and over and over again gives you like 20 hours of overtime a week.
Mhm.
So they're paying time and a half for that, plus a $30,000 signing bonus, plus they're giving you a really decent wage. Plus, remember this: you have no bills. If you take an over the road job, you don't need to maintain an apartment. Why? If you're driving everywhere and you're living in your truck, then why would you need to? What's it called?
Domicile.
Yeah. And people in the chat are saying trucking has been saying this for decades because they've always made good money. But what I'm saying is now they're making phenomenal money because there isn't enough truckers out there. They need them more than anything. And why become a doctor when you can be a trucker? Why become a doctor when you can be a plumber? Plumbers make more than doctors. Over time, doctors might make more when they get into the bigger leagues and start making, 400,000 or 500,000 a year in private practice. But starting salary, plumbers make way more than doctors, and they'll probably make just as much over time.
Do you know what the average salary is for a plumber nowadays in the U.S.?
I don't have the slightest idea. I ever say about plumbers is that when I was in high school, when I was a freshman in high school, there was this girl, and on her 17th birthday, she came to school in a red BMW convertible, and all of us were like, "Where on earth could she have gotten the money for that?"
Mhm.
And someone turned to me like, "Dude, are you crazy? Her father's a plumber. Like, I should know that means they're rich. That's why they're so wealthy is because he's a plumber." And then I had a roommate that was a plumber as well. They owned like 6 houses. They were like all driving Audis and BMWs. Like, they make money because you know why? It doesn't matter what the circumstance is. Nobody wants to deal with shit,
Mhm.
and they will. If your toilet explodes in the middle of the night and is pouring shit onto your floor, I don't care if they come and say, sign over your firstborn, you'll do it. And trust me, everyone does. Like, have for all the people that are going, I'm skeptical. Have you ever had a plumber at your house to fix something? Usually they'll say it's $300-400 for something that will take less than an hour.
Mhm.
If they're going to be there all day, you're talking thousands of dollars that you're going to owe for that job.
Mhm. Yeah, and obviously it's a job that most people don't want to do, given the physical labor involved, as well as the disgusting elements of it. But it's a very necessary job, all the same. So it's not hard to figure out why they're so well paid.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, being a trucker is less less excremental, one might say. And I don't say with any disrespect to plumbers at all. Like I said, they have a vital profession. Just talking about the harsh reality of it, which you were mentioning. But being a trucker is something that involves literally less excrement. And given the shortage, it's not surprising that they are so well paid. It has to be something, though, I think that people can do with a very regimented sleep pattern because like you said, the scheduling is what it is.
Yeah, and it's just the way that it's going to go. Now, listen, being a trucker, it's a hard life. Growing up, I think we saw my father like maybe once a month,
Wow.
maybe a couple days each month. There were times where he'd have like a week or two off here and there, but it was rare. But and kids are weird. I always respected my father that he was willing to go through that to
Mhm.
provide us with
Definitely.
a house and food on our table and stuff. My sister, I don't think she's ever forgiven him.
Wow.
Like, because he was never there. He was never there for her ballet classes or for any of her like plays or anything she did. Like, what are you gonna do?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a hard life, as you mentioned, and it's something that is all demanding of one's schedule. There's not anything in the way of what we call a work-life balance, but it's a very good way to turn a more than decent income, and it's something that's not going away. I don't think automated trucks are on the horizon.
So, unpopular opinion saying that he sees it 60 grand first year out of trucking school. That's 60 grand without the signing bonus, which everybody is offering right now, and that's an hourly rate that doesn't consider overtime. They're not allowed to promise you overtime. It's against the law to put that into a salary because it's considered elective. So, because technically you don't have to work overtime in any job. Now, they have the right to say you're not working out here, but it's someone just asked me, you have to know my mother to know how she got by with it. Not only did my mother raise me and my sister without my father basically ever there, she took in other kids. She
Wow,
became a foster mother and took in newborns that were taken away by the state. I had 17 brothers and sisters over the years.
that is shock.
Now,
Wow,
most of them they
shocking.
took for 1 or 2 years, 3 years, but yeah, I had 17 brothers and sisters, and two of them, one with fetal alcohol syndrome. They adopted her. She still lives with them, and she's in her 30s.
Wow.
And the boy, they didn't adopt him, but he came to us. He was like I don't know how to describe how retarded he was, but he was still like, he's still in, I assume he's still in diapers now,
Wow.
you know, but like he couldn't speak, all of that. He was there until he was 18. They didn't adopt him because the state wouldn't have continued to pay for his care and stuff if they adopted him. And they knew he was going to eventually need a home. You know, like he wasn't going to be able to stay in their home anymore. So, but 18 years he was with us. Him and my adopted sister and my natural sister and me. And as I said, 16 or I think it was 17 kids they took in for the least amount of time she ever had one for was, I believe, 8 months. And that was once. Usually it was like 2 or 3 years. So in addition to that, we had two dogs. We had a bunch of other animals, like, and my mom works.
Wow.
She's not a stay at home mom. She was a public school teacher.
Mhm.
So how did my mom deal with it? Very well, apparently. She's just one of those people.
That's to say it's a credit to your mother is a drastic understatement. She's uh, uh, truly remarkable.
Hmm.
That's I mean it's the words can hardly describe.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was tough on us, but I mean, at the same time, we never noticed anything wrong with it. You know, like that was the thing. Like you'll hear people go, "Oh, I don't know how someone could have done this or that or this or that." We never noticed it. Like we never noticed that it was difficult on anyone. We never like, we just never noticed those kind of things. So, Ultra Test, do the very simple math: $30,000 signing bonus, $60,000 a year, and you get time and a half, and you work normally at least 20 hours a week overtime. Do the what's it called? Do the math.
It's really amazing stuff. It is. I can see why a lot of people would want to become truckers given the money, but then it is so demanding. Although being a plumber, that really takes. I mean, it takes a very special person to be a trucker, but it takes an extremely special person to be a plumber. That's so you can understand why these fields, even though they require advanced degrees, are so highly paid.
The thing that's really good if you want to become a trucker is if you're right out of high school or
Hmm.
right out of college. Like you don't have a home, like you don't own your home. You don't have like, I mean, you can even have a dog. It's just, I mean, they live just as well in trucks as they do in apartments. You just have to be willing to walk them whenever you stop and stuff like that. But if you're able to put in those kind of hours, like you don't have a wife, you don't have a home that you own a mortgage on and all of that, you can work for a few years, make some really good money, spend nothing because you really aren't spending anything. They give you the truck, they pay for the gas, they tell you where to go. The only thing you got to basically pay for is food and entertainment. Those are the only two things you actually like. You generally like anything else, you could just not do it. So if you really want to spend like a few years busting your ass and then have a really nice amount of money before you sit down. Yes, I saw that Andrew Anglin is back on Twitter. I've interacted with him a couple times, but he's acting very different on Twitter than he does outside of Twitter. Let's say it that way.
I was rather surprised as they let that fellow back on,
They
to
let
say
every
the
that, from what
absolute
I
least.
understand, they let everybody back on as long as they tried to come back on, and now look, Musk is still banning people, and it's not like it used to be. It used to be if you said something that Twitter didn't like, they would just basically stop you from tweeting or liking everything for like 12 hours or whatever. They're banning for like 7 days now, and during that 7 days, you can't do anything. You can't even log into your account and see your timeline.
Wow, that's
So
something else.
he let everybody back on, but he it's not the free for all that liberals are pretending.
Yeah. No, I am surprised that Anglin was restored though, because he's so over the top in a truly awful way. But anyway, talking about business, which I think we were easing our way into.
Sure.
You are a veteran consultant, looking at I suppose where the nature of business is headed in America. It seems that remote work is the future. Do you think that this is a positive avenue, generally speaking, for companies large and small, or do you think it depends upon the size of the company, or well, obviously, maybe I would say obviously maybe what the company does? What's your stance on this? Timely question.
So how to best say this? Where to start is what I'm thinking.
Mhm.
Number one, when I was in college, right? I did a 6 month internship in DC, right? First, I worked for a nonprofit, and then I did an internship with a nonprofit, and then I worked on Capitol Hill for a little while. While I was there, like that's when you kind of really are deciding what you're going to do with your life, because you know when you're done interning in DC, that's the best time to apply for jobs,
Mm.
right? I was the type of person that even in a place like Congress where everybody has an opinion and nobody likes anybody, I still got a lot of shit for my opinions. So I knew that I had to go into a type of business where I wouldn't work for 5 years, work my way up the ladder, and then say something stupid or, say something cancelable and have to start over if I can even do it. So I while I was working on Capitol Hill when I was in DC in general, one thing I got really into was helping constituents and helping companies access government money. Like the Fauci's NIH. That's why I know so much about him. When I saw him at the beginning of the pandemic, I was like, oh God, we're fucked. But like the NIH, the NSF, the Department of Defense, these people give away billions of dollars of money to mostly companies, right? So this is fun, just kicking people off my channel. So what I would do is I kind of learned these things because the applications were insanely technical. It's not that they were hard; you just had to know how to do it, and most people don't know how to do it. So as a consultant, I would walk around and talk to these companies and say, have you ever tried accessing government money? It's free. You don't have to pay it back. It'll do all these great things for you. Like I would just sell the hell out of it. And that started me as basically a business development consultant, because I would come in and I would get them these, 100 million, $150 million grants, sometimes less, sometimes more, sometimes they were 40,000. But it was always they would hire me and I would bring in money. So I had credibility right there to start. And it was a way that I could still have my controversial opinions. I could still say whatever I wanted. And if somebody like fired me, no one would even know about it. Like if they, because it was just a relationship that ended. It wasn't like, oh, you're fired. Now I have to figure out where am I going to apply for a job. And over the years, the best way you can show people you're a good consultant is how much you spend in advertising. If you spend $10,000 a year advertising, you're probably not doing that good of a job, because a good consultant should be turning down clients. A good consultant should be so in demand that, yeah, there are times where things just don't work out and you don't have a client for a couple months. But you should really, really, really be able to just kind of spread it word of mouth. I never had a website for myself about it. I never paid for advertising. I just, when contracts would come to an end, I would just ask for recommendations. Usually my clients themselves would say, I know this great startup. I've worked with their COO before. I'm going to set a meeting with you. You'd be great for them. And then you have your next client. Mm-hmm. So do I think it's when we were talking about it the other night, I was thinking about it for half the night afterwards, because I knew we would be talking about it. Mm-hmm. The one thing about consulting that I mean, look, maybe I'm over the hill at this point. I don't know how you can sell it without being face to face with someone. Like, for people to trust you and to want to work with you and to be able to brainstorm and have a back and forth with them, I don't know how you can do that on Zoom, or like how you can even make like potential client appointments and really make sure they're going to show up. Like, there's been plenty of appointments that I've set, like, because when I needed clients that I wasn't recommended, I would just call companies I wanted to work with. And they would set meetings. And that if I wasn't sitting in the lobby waiting for them, they would be like, oh, cancel that meeting. I don't have time right now. Because I can't even tell you how many meetings I've sat through where the client was so busy. They were at first looking at their watch, and next thing you know, an hour later, we were still talking. Mm. So I don't know how you're able to sell it without being face to face. But as I said, that just could be because I'm getting old.
Yeah, the nowadays, obviously, remote work is the big thing, and that includes consulting and many other departments, one might say. But I do see what you're saying about the face-to-face value of consulting. I don't think that the value obviously never goes away, but I would say the industry has adapted itself to remote work, largely spurred on by COVID. But I think it was probably just a progression that was taking place regardless. However, COVID did absolutely accelerate things. What do you think, by the way, about remote work and COVID? Do you think that COVID is something that, because I mean, remote work was going to keep on getting more and more popular regardless of coronavirus, but COVID absolutely accelerated the process. I think the question is, to what extent do you think COVID accelerated it? Is it something that's overstated? I don't know how it could be understated, but maybe it is. Anything to say about this, Hall?
So again, this is something that I've talked about a gazillion times on my show with TFM with a whole bunch of other people. I think that homework has always been underrated. I think that this idea that everybody has to come to an office to congregate, I don't think it's that productive. I don't think that I think that when you have everybody coming to an office, getting there at 9 o'clock and leaving at 6 o'clock every day, I think if you're lucky that you're getting 2-3 hours of productive work out of people.
Mm-hmm.
The issue with working from home, you're getting that same amount of work from people working from home. So I think what's happening is that bosses are thinking that because you're working from home, you're still putting in, your 8 hours a day. You're not. You're putting in that 2-3 productive hours that you were before. You're probably doing more than you were when you were at the office. But the majority of the day, you're not doing anything. And for some reason, that really bothers people. Like people, it might just be an archetype. It might be something that's so ingrained in our
Sure.
humanity that
I
we
think it
can't
is.
get rid of it. But like,
Mhm.
someone thinks if I'm paying you a salary to work, you're supposed to work from 9 to 6 or the equivalent of those hours a day. And if you're turning out a certain amount of work over, but you're only working 3 hours, their thought is always going to be, well, if this person is turning in this much work, working 3 hours, if I hire someone better to work from home, they'll put in 8 hours and do this much work, times 2.5. And I think I think it's going to be difficult to find a balance with that. I really do. Maybe they will. I think it's going to be difficult.
I think that any kind of a balance when it comes to this is necessarily difficult, but I think there will be some sort of consensus in the business sector over the next several years when it comes to the hourly work done remotely, and I think that consensus will probably hold for quite some time. But I don't see remote work going anywhere. I do think it is the future. Obviously, one aspect of remote work that I am not a fan of, even though I think remote work is generally a very good thing, it's that people no longer dress up for work, which obviously did promote an atmosphere and attitude of professionalism, at least in most cases. Nowadays people can do rather important jobs in their pajamas from home, and I'm sure that will have some impact upon their mindset while at work. But I don't think it's big enough impact that it would be something that would make remote work go away. On the contrary, I think remote work is going to persist mightily. I think I've said that more than enough at this point.
I think you're right. Don't get me wrong. I think remote work is here to stay. I think what's in transition the most right now is how much work does an employer expect and need from you for the money they're paying you. And I think that becomes an issue because have you I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, I want to say lately, but it's been so many years since I've done it. Like, I feel like everything is yesterday, but most of it was pre-COVID. So I say all the time, "Oh, I just saw him a little while ago," and I realized that was before COVID. So, and that's 4 or 5 years from, like whatever. But the majority of what people do at offices is have meetings. Those
Mhm.
meetings are completely unproductive, but at least you see everybody's there thinking about work.
Right.
So if you've had a day where you show up at 9, you had 9 meetings, then you worked for an hour, then you had 2 more meetings and went home, Number one, you're trash tired by the time you get home.
Mhm.
And number two, generally most people feel like they've had a productive day at that point, in that they probably worked more than they should have. But if you think
Mhm.
about it, nothing got done. Everyone just sat around bullshitting and
Oh.
trying to show off in a meeting. So I think that that's the difficult transition we're making right now, is figuring out what is productive. What is it that we expect from our employees? What do we want from them at the end of the day if they're going to be working from home? And can we quantify that in a way that we say, okay, that's worth more to me than a person who's going to sit in my office and have meetings all day? I would rather have that person doing X. And can I live with the fact that I know they're not working 8 hours a day?
If you were consulting a theoretical business right now, and obviously your answer is going to have to be very general, given the theoretical aspect of the question, but if you were and you were trying to guide this business as to how it should adapt to the changing labor market, which is obviously something that leaves most employers at a disadvantage, while at the same time, uh, remote work is greatly emphasized. What would you say is the most important adaptive quality for a business to have?
Schedule. And I think that this is, when I say schedule, I don't mean that I have my calendar, because like I keep my most things in my calendar that's on my phone and my computer, just because I never pay attention to what time it is. So if I don't have things popping up and saying you have to do this at this time, I just never would. Like the end of the day would come and I would notice that I didn't do anything I was supposed to do because I just lost track of time. I don't mean that. What I mean is that even if you're in something like life science, where you have to be in a lab a lot, like that's all there is to it. But you don't have to be in a lab all the time. So I think you should have, if you are going to give, like, if you're going to have a hybrid, which I still think is best. I think it's best if one day a work, one day a week, everybody goes to the office no matter what. Like even if it's just for a few hours, that everybody can look each other in the face, talk about things, and those things that pop into your brain when you see somebody, like you're able to say, "Oh, I forgot, I wanted to talk to you about ordering these toilet papers for the bathroom," or whatever it may be. But I think that it's important to say, like, okay, I have to get X, Y, and Z done this week. It's very important that I study this, or I do this, or I write this report. So I'm going to be home working on X, Y, and Z for the next couple days. Then I have to spend at least 5 hours in the lab or something like that. And then I have to tally my results 50-50. So this is what I want to get done by the end of the week. And at the end of the week, a good boss or a good whatever should be able to check in, like, did you accomplish those things? And if not, why? Like, is it because
Mm-hmm.
things came up that, like, oh my God, like we discovered something amazing and now we're going to be, taking over the market? Or is it that you just were lazy and didn't get to it? So, like, I think those things are important, that your boss can feel comfortable that you're starting the week doing this and you're ending the week doing this. And I think that if you have to write a report for your boss, there's no value to spending 45 minutes commuting to work, finding a place to park, spending an hour taking a
Absolutely.
shower, getting dressed, like all of that wasted time just to go sit at your computer at work when you can do it at home. There's no.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only asterisk I'll put on this, some people are just not capable of working from home. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
mean that they're bad employees. In an office, they're phenomenal. They just don't have the discipline to do it at home.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be an issue. I don't even know how to deal with it. Like, do you keep an office for those people? And would they be productive if they were basically the only ones there? Who knows? But you have to expect that there's a lot of employees that are great employees. They're just not disciplined enough to be able to work from home, you know?
Yeah, I think discipline is a big thing when it comes to remote work. But yeah, then again, it's also a big thing when it comes to working at a traditional job site as well. We all know that there are some people who show up and goof off around the water cooler, or spend their time spreading gossip from cubicle to cubicle, so on and so forth. The people who try to look busy behind a computer, but in reality, they're looking at Amazon or maybe something of a more adult nature. So it's the fact of the matter is that productivity is something which should be emphasized in any business setting, whether it's home or something more traditional. And a lot of people just are not going to be productive because that's who they are on a personality level.
No, but I'm not talking about those people. That I agree with
Mhm.
you. What I'm talking about is those people who don't have the ability to think through what they should do without being told. There are those people that all day long you can tell them run these numbers, make this report, like, and they are
Mhm.
phenomenal at their job.
Mhm.
They're just not able to get it through their head that they need to do that. They
Mhm.
need to be told what to do. They don't have that it's the word I'm looking for. They don't have that kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Drive to
Uh-huh.
do it, but they don't have the ingenuity to do it. It's not like that's why I say not everybody can work for themselves.
Mhm.
Like it's just true. It's not everybody can because a lot of people can't get it through their head that they eat what they kill. If they don't
Mhm.
get out there and make their business work, they'll starve.
Mhm.
So those people are great employees and they will usually do that bullshit work that nobody wants to do in the office. Like the grunt work. You can't have an office of people who all believe they're changing the world.
Mhm.
Like not everyone can be a leader. You need people to actually do the work.
Mhm.
The grunt work, and those people will not thrive at a work from home scenario. So, again, that's
Mhm.
something. It's. I'm not saying it's unworkable. I'm just saying it's something that's got to be thought of.
Mhm. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how that is handled. I think these people probably, I think most people are capable of working from home, but there are just some that aren't. I'd say these people are the minority, but they would make themselves very clear to an employer early on as to whether or not they would work out working from home. So I think it's something that's pretty easily handled one way or another by a company. And I don't think this represents most workers. What do you think?
Repeat that again. I didn't get the last bit of it.
Oh, I was gonna say, I don't think this is something that represents most workers, and I think that this is the sort of situation you described is something that most companies would be able to handle pretty easily, relatively early on, because they would see whether or not somebody is basically doing their job in short order.
No, but I'm saying first of all, I would say at least 60%, if not more, workers are this way. And
Really?
it's not that, as I said, it's not that them being home they won't do their job. These people are usually more paranoid than someone like me or you about losing their job. It's just they don't know how, like, they're not able to start their day and go, okay, what will make the company good today? Like, what can I do for my boss? Like, they need to be told what to do.
Mhm.
And like, if out of sight, out of mind, if you have a worker sitting at home and you never give them work to do, they'll either seem like they're lazy or they seem like they're incapable of doing what you want to do them to do. But if they're in the office, they're the best workers you could have.
Mhm. I think that's important for any remote work situation to entail a very clear list of responsibilities, what people are supposed to do, and not so much to expect them to do something at a certain time, unless it's like a meeting that you show up for a presentation. Obviously, that's something time specific. But beyond that, they should have to meet deadlines regularly, routinely, and hopefully they would develop a good sense of time management. But some people just can't do it for the same reason some people can't, do college online or something like that.
Yeah, because those people you're talking about are just lazy.
Mhm.
And also, look, I'm one of these people. If you tell me on Monday I need something done by Friday, chances are I'm going to start it Thursday night and turn it in Friday morning, and it will still be better than anyone else can give you because I work better that way.
Mhm.
If I start it on Monday, I'm going to rewrite it every single day until I just wind up doing the same thing anyway. That on Thursday I go, holy shit, this is due tomorrow. I'll throw it in the garbage and just start over. And what you're going to get is what you would have gotten if I started it on Thursday anyway. But other people aren't like that. Other people do need the 5 days to really like get out their
Uh,
best work. As I
mhm.
said, it's not that those people are going to like figure it out or fall behind. You need those people too. You need those people who are not so driven to become the CEO one day. The people that are like, you need the people that are very content getting a raise of 10% a year, and doing all the bullshit work that nobody wants.
Mhm. Different strokes work for different folks, as the old saying goes. I think that that sums up the situation well enough. Now, what do you suppose is going to be the case with Generation Z and work? Because there is a noted, one might say, lack of work ethic among Zoomers. Do you think they'll take to online work better than previous generations have, or do you think that they will wind up having a lack of motivation, direction, and in many cases, ability to follow fairly basic orders? Whether they're in a brick and mortar work situation or whether they're working from their relative's basement. What do you suppose will come of Generation Z in the workplace with regard to anything that I've mentioned?
It depends on the industry, but I think that we're going to see the same problem with them in the workforce as you're seeing online, in politics, in schools. The issue is the white kids are being told that they're ultra privileged and can do whatever they want, without trying because they're so lucky that they were born white. Right? That isn't actually true. So like you can't just sit there and go, "Oh, well, I'm white, so I'm going to get a great job." Most
Obviously.
half the minorities that are saying that are worthless to have as employees. They think the only reason they don't have the $1 million a year job is because they're a minority. You're going to see this more and more in the workplace, in that people. I've been talking about this since I can, even since I was in high school. The problem with a good portion of workers is they believe their salary exists to get them to the office every day. They don't believe that working is included in that. Like, if and it bears out in survey after survey after survey. If you ask employees whether they deserve a raise, almost all of them say yes. Do you
Sure.
know what the most common answer as to why?
That's a good question. I'll venture a guess. I would say that they would probably say they're overworked and underpaid, and that the effort they put in, is not met by their salary. They basically say they're undervalued.
Close. What they say is, more simply, I do a really good job here. Now, the thing is, you're paid to do a really good job here.
Uh,
That's what your salary is.
mhm.
You're not paid to show up and take roll call. This isn't a prison. Like you're here to work hard for me. That's why I'm paying you a salary. If you want me to pay you more, you need to tell me, like, why do you deserve more? Do you stay late? Do you come early? Like, but the most popular answer is I do a good job, and they don't understand they're already being paid for that. And they take offense if someone says, well, that's not a reason to give you a raise. This is something that's going to have to be dealt with, because it's going to get a lot worse, and it's going to keep getting a lot worse.
Mhm. I think it will. I think there's definitely issues with attitude among many Zoomers and millennials as well. But it would seem that's worse among Zoomers, where they do expect basically to be treated in a rather exalted fashion that is not met by their output or their career accomplishments or even their education level. It's really it's unfortunate, but when they're not treated in a sort of princely way, they begin to think that somebody's discriminating against them, somebody has it out for them in an untoward fashion, somebody is trying to screw them over, it certainly gives rise to a profound victimhood mentality that creates many problems in the workplace.
So the numbers bear out what I'm about to say. If you look at, there's been studies, there's been a lot of surveys on this. There's actually a boomerang effect that you're seeing, in that, because all of these white kids are, like, basically told, like, oh, you're not, like, they're not getting the middle management jobs. They're not getting the, diversity, inclusion, and equity, jobs. They're not getting the human resources jobs, because, after all, they have white privilege, and every job is falling over each other to hire more minorities and women. So what happens is you're seeing that that's exactly what companies are doing. They're hiring more minorities and women that are god awful at work, and that really do believe that, like, their being there is what they're getting paid for. They don't think they have to work. Like, in fact, when they get to work, they're shocked that they're even being asked to work, and they're a serious problem. And the white kids who were told, you're not going to be able to work here in middle management, we need to hire more minorities or whatever, they're all going out and becoming plumbers and, you know welders and all kinds of stuff, and they're killing it, making really good money. So you're seeing that before the minorities and the women, they all claimed that they couldn't get the jobs doing nothing like white people do, because all white people do is show up to work, chew on cigars, and laugh and grab secretaries' asses all day, while we're out here doing the real hard work, you know? And then they all got those jobs and go, oh, now I'm going to sit on my ass and smoke cigars and grab secretaries' asses all day. They realized that, first of all, nobody's grabbing secretaries' asses. Cigars don't go well in the workforce, and you have to work to get paid. And if you create a culture of fear that if you tell a woman or a minority, if you don't work, you're fired, that they're going to sue you, then you either get to keep your job, but your company goes bankrupt, or you get fired anyway, and they just hire whatever minority you are in the place and lather, rinse, repeat. But as I said, they're creating this incentive for white kids to go out and figure out how to work on their own and how to join industries where they can work on their own. And I think you're going to see a lot more boomerang effect like this in the like. Yes, white people will be upset that they can't go to college and learn underwater lesbian basket weaving like everybody else and get a job in middle management where they don't have to do anything. But when they realize that's not real anyway, they're going to get real jobs and they're going to be paid really well, and they're going to find themselves to be much more desired in society than someone with purple hair who goes to the bar and orders a cranberry martini and talks about how they've got this great job diversifying their office.
I was going to say, what do you think will come of the diversity, equity, and inclusion movement in corporate America and other countries? Do you think this is going to last? Because it certainly is sort of a cottage industry that has exploded in prevalence over the last decade or so, especially the last, I would say, 5 to 7 years. What do you suppose will come of that? Do you think this is something which can be sustained? I don't think it's making most companies money, this movement. But do you think that's something that they'll write off and just keep around? What do you think is going to come of this?
I think that originally you had all of these companies, mostly tech companies too. They were the ones who really started this whole thing. They would hire a chief diversity officer. They would start hiring on quotas. They'd be like, well, blacks make up 12% of this city, and we only have 11.5% blacks here. So we need to hire another black person. And they'd hire like someone who has no idea what they're doing. Right. And if you tried to get rid of any of these diversity people, they would sue the hell out of you because they would say the reason you're getting rid of them is because they're a minority or whatever. So I think what you're seeing now is corporations took them seriously for a while and then realized it wasn't productive and didn't help them at all. So I think now they're the ones that can afford it are just hiring a diversity chapter in their business and just ignoring them. Like they're letting them like yeah, they can sit in their offices and talk about how they're going to create a black Indian safe space on the fourth floor where Muslims can pray, blacks can celebrate Kwanzaa, and Indians can bow to Buddha, and no white people are allowed. They can all do that, but everyone else just ignores them in everything that they do. And I think sooner or later they'll start making enough noise at being ignored that they'll just get fired in general. Like look at Netflix. You don't get a more woke company than Netflix. And then basically they realized they were losing all their money. And the CEO just came out and was like, oh, yeah, you're going to hear things here that you don't like. And if you don't like it, this isn't the place for you to work. You're going to see a lot more than that, more of that.
Mm-hmm. I think businesses do need to get real and start focusing on product, not wasting time with these various social and political crusades. Really, politics have no place in the workforce at all. That's the bottom line. I mean, you'll hold whatever politics they want. I certainly would never want to see a company discriminate against anyone working for it on the basis of their politics, as long as they don't bring their politics into the workforce and try to force their politics on others. Then, of course, the company has to step in. But I think that people should be allowed to express themselves freely on their own time, as long as they don't use the company's name, to make the company's endorsing something that they're saying. And I think that people should not be they should not have any expectation that they're going to come into their place of work, whether it's in person, traditionally, or virtually, remote work, and start politicizing it. They should be of the mindset that work is work. I'm there to attain goals. And I really can do with something else, something that is to do with my social views, my political views, whatever. When I'm not working, it's not a hard concept to grasp, but many people have a really difficult time grabbing it all the same.
Because and people are learning this the hard way. Okay,
Mhm.
and they're going to keep learning it the hard way. And I think that I hate using the pendulum argument, but it's true in this case. Like the pendulum will swing. People need to accept right now, as quickly as they can, if they want to thrive, the internet is not a real place.
Mm.
Okay, because right now people are going into the offices and doing what they do on the internet for popularity, which is virtue signal.
Mm.
Right? So nobody cares if you can actually do your job. They care whether you wore a rainbow flag on Pride Day. And if you didn't, they're going to the bosses and complaining that you're a Nazi. And a lot of people are humoring each other on this right now, but they're starting to figure out that people that virtue signal are doing it for a reason, because it masks the fact that they're not actually doing anything. That's what virtue signaling is. It's I don't need to actually do anything because I can prove I'm a better person than you. That's what virtue signaling is, and it's a product of the internet. I always give this example. I had a friend. He was at a protest. I forgot what it was. He was even protesting, but he had on one of those Count Dankula shirts,
Uh,
right? Like the one with the
uh,
pug giving the Nazi symbol and all of that. And he got into an argument with some reporter, and the reporter said, "Well, why should I take you?" And this is an Orthodox Jewish guy, and the reporter said, "Well, why should I even take you seriously? You're wearing a Nazi shirt." And he's like, "I am not. It has nothing to do with being a Nazi." And the reporter was like, "Yeah, whatever." And he actually wrote to me later that night, and he's like, "Look, fuck this bitch. I can't believe she said that about me, but I need to have, like, what is a good comeback that I could have for this?" And I said, "You can't." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because think of how ridiculous you're going to sound when someone goes, 'You're wearing a shirt that has a dog giving the Nazi symbol walking down the street.' When they say, 'Oh, obviously you're a Nazi,' what are you supposed to say? 'No, I'm not. There was this guy on Twitter and YouTube who wanted to prove to his girlfriend that he could make his dog do something inappropriate. So he taught his dog how to do the Hitler salute every time he said gas the Jews. And because of that, he was sued in Britain and thrown in jail for saying bad things. So, and we all wear these shirts to show that free speech is awesome. Wait a minute. So you're wearing a t-shirt of some guy who taught his girlfriend's dog to do a Nazi salute whenever you say gas the Jews, but you're not really a Nazi. No, I'm not at all. Actually, like, I don't believe in that stuff at all. You're going to sound so stupid that it's impossible to justify what it is with the point you're trying to make. The only thing you could say to justify the point you're trying to make is you have to go, "Oh, well, fuck you. I'm not a Nazi," and try to make your case for whatever. But, and it's Andre saying it's funny. I agree it's funny. I thought the shirt was funny. But you're not going to be able to argue in the real world that you're not a believer in any of this kind of stuff because it's actually just a funny internet meme. Because people don't get that.
mhm.
People don't understand why that's funny unless they were like part of seeing it when it happened. Telling someone about it a couple years later, you sound ridiculous.
Mm.
And that's exactly how people treat you. It's the same way in the office when people start virtue signaling all over the place about shit that doesn't matter. Like, if you're, like, getting your work done and someone comes over and goes, "Did you see the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago this morning? And I think the orange Cheeto is actually going to go to jail." And you look at them and go, "What?" "Yeah, the FBI said that he had classified documents in a closet, and he might have sold them to Saudi Arabia." What? You know, I think if that were true, I would have heard something about it. But anyway, I'm at work. I don't have time for this shit right now. And they go, "Oh, I get it. You're a Trumper. You're one of those people." Like, and then they run around telling everybody, like, don't talk to him. He voted for Donald Trump.
Uh,
Like, that girl is going to sooner or later get fired
uh,
because nobody likes that person. And you'll put up with that person for a certain amount of time, especially if, like the cost isn't too high. Like, if you're not getting in trouble at work or whatever, you'll put up with it. But sooner or later, that girl's getting fired. And we have a whole generation of people who act like that in public. That's what all the. That JoJo from Jersey chick is pathetic. She's the worst. Someone from the chat just said it. She is the worst. But she's also a paid shill. Biden did a whole thing where he brought all the paid shills in, and they their boss was there showing off his paid shills. Like her, that Brooklyn dad guy, Jack
oh
Churchill,
yeah.
like they were all at the White House with Biden, like talking about how awesome it is being a paid shill. Like that's why I always laugh when all these people try to argue with them. I like to quote tweet them and just be like, "Wow, look how retarded this person is." But seriously, like you have all these people and they'll have hundreds of responses in their comments, like arguing with them. But the thing is, they don't read those. They don't care. They're paid shills. They have like Twitter DM rooms where they just find out what their latest talking point is. And they go, oh, we're talking about Trump getting raided right now. Oh, we're angry at George Santos right now. Like, oh, Elon Musk is a dick right now. Like, they just go out and usually they all have the same tweet. They just add something different to the end of it. Like that JoJo from Jers Girl just writes whatever it is, and at the end she goes, and if you like that, you're just an asshole. Like that's her thing, and they all do it, but they're paid shills. The best thing to do is not argue with paid shills because they're not interested in finding out your point. You know?
No, absolutely, and unfortunately, there are a lot of paid shills out there, much more than obviously a lot of people would like to admit. It's really fascinating because I think that when it comes to what the formation of popular opinion online through social media, a lot of folks don't realize that the people who they turn to for guidance are not people who are really skilled in any appreciable fashion with regard to the subject matter, which is to say that they are not knowledgeable about the subject matter, just relying on someone who purportedly knows better. But in fact, this person is just repeating a talking point, and people take it seriously for whatever unfortunate purpose. So that's really it's a serious problem. There's no
Yeah, but
two ways about that.
that's an insanely nice way to say it.
It is.
Like these people are dumb as bricks. Like I mean, they are really that stupid. Like I remember there was one of them, and this guy, like I mean, he's like legit retarded, and he right. Remember when the Republican Party of Wyoming censored Liz Cheney?
Sure.
He tweeted something along. I'm paraphrasing, but this was the point. I thought Republicans were against censorship. And like he made this whole point that them censoring her proved the Republicans were hypocrites because Republicans say they're against censorship.
He doesn't understand the difference between censure and censure.
Yeah, he completely not. And when people pointed it out to him, he basically was like, "Well, haha, you're the dummy. You don't get it." And then he just started ignoring like whatever they were saying. But I'm saying like these people are legit really stupid. Mm-hmm. So it's not worth arguing with a paid shill because they're being paid to do a job. They're not there to promote their own politics. They don't understand their own politics. They don't understand any of these topics that they're talking about. They're there to promote talking points. So arguing with them will just A, it'll make you crazy. And B, you will never, ever, ever change their minds on anything because they're not trying to have their minds changed. If they changed their minds, they would lose their job. So trust me, they're not trying to get to the point. So just the best thing to do is block them or ignore them like you would any other spam.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And when it comes to politics, it's one thing, but when it comes to business and economics, it's much more. I mean, politics are very complicated, but business and economics are arguably even more complicated. And a lot of people don't really have a deep understanding of how one thing relates to another when it comes to anything that that regards money. Some people thinking that the government can print its way out of an inflationary crisis, for instance. Other people thinking that axing fossil fuels at this point in time. I'm not a fossil fuels fanatic, but I do see that fossil fuels have their purpose, and you can't just axe them out of society. But a lot of people don't understand that doing away with fossil fuels, it's going to cause hyperinflation, no doubt. Couple that with printing more and more money, but these people, they understand the relationship between cause and effect, and that's a very sad thing indeed.
Yeah, but what I'm saying though is that like these people, it's not just that they don't get it; it's that they don't get it to a point of just pure utter silliness, and it's infectious. It really is spreading. I'm just looking right now for like like my favorite one is the one where they'll say Ron DeSantis has enough money to bus people or fly people up to Martha's Vineyard. But the other day when I was in Florida, I saw a homeless person begging for food. Like, how can he afford to do this when this person is begging for food? It's like, oh, we're going to talk about all the things Democrats could spend money on but don't? Like, are we actually talking about wasted money? Like, if you're going to say something that's stupid, it's obvious that it's not only that you don't get it, it's you don't want to.
Well, also when it comes to what DeSantis did and what Abbott did, and what I believe Abbott is still doing, they use money from the federal government meant to resettle immigrants, and they just devoted that to shipping them elsewhere, and that's basically it. So it's not the money that they allocated for this stuff. It could not have been used to help the homeless man in any case.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Oh, I know, you know that. But I'm saying these people don't seem to understand that when the government uses money, it's earmarked for certain activities. The government doesn't just have I mean, it does have a general fund, but the general fund is not what it taps into for any given thing. It has it has money that's allocated for certain purposes, but most people, they don't quite understand it. It's sort of like when Obama was first elected president, and some reporter was doing an interview when they came out with what were called Obama phones. It was when I
I
think
remember
with
that.
yes, I think with what was it, TANF? There was a cell phone that was granted to people at the time, and somebody asked one of the recipients, where do you think the money for this came from? And the recipient said Obama's stash, as if he had a stash of money just to, devote to this. But it goes to show a lot of people don't really understand the finer details here.
Oh, I agree with you on that, but
Mhm.
it's also along the lines, and this is something again we've been talking about for a while. Me and you talk about it all the time too.
Mhm.
It's especially true with the Democrats, and it's not just because I disagree with them politically, right? If you look at the Democrats in the leadership of the House or the Senate, they're insanely old.
Mhm.
Okay, like yes, there are some old Republicans too, but like all like Jerry Nadler shits himself in press conferences. Dianne Feinstein, Biden, they don't know where they are most of the time. Like these are the people in charge of their party. And what the media and the Democratic Party has decided at this point is that instead of just acknowledging this and either encouraging other people to step up and run, or to say like, okay, well maybe it's not wise to have like a 84-year-old man running for president.
Mhm.
Instead of any of that, they're just pretending that it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And because they're pretending it doesn't exist, they need everybody else to believe it doesn't exist. So they're
Mhm.
just gaslighting everybody. But it's to the point like, it's fake. You
Mhm.
know what they're telling you is a lie, but they don't want you to believe it. They just want you to say you believe it because then other people will still believe it.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, this thing with the vaccine, right? Now, look, I got the original vaccine. I got the J&J vaccine. It was more because of bad impulse control than anything else. But I don't care what you think of the vaccine. It makes no difference. The point at this point is that they have said it doesn't stop transmission, it doesn't keep you out of the hospital, and it doesn't stop you from getting COVID again. There's no practical reason to take it anymore. Like, it just doesn't exist. Because you can't, like, okay, well, why am I taking it? They said that you take it now because it prevents serious like cases of the disease. It turns out that's not true from the CDC's numbers. Basically, taking the vaccine or not, COVID's going to treat you exactly like it would whether you take it or not. That seems to be what it is. But they're still trying to shame people into taking it. And if you bring these things up to people, they get angry with you. You know, like I've always used this classic example of the absolute dolt I was arguing with 6 months ago, where I said, "Don't you find it odd that for an entire year we didn't really? I think we had 198 cases of the flu." And she looked at me and she said, "Well, what do you expect? Everybody is social distancing and wearing masks. Of course there were no flu cases." I said, "Well, then how did COVID spread?" And she said, "Because nobody's wearing a mask or social distancing." And I just looked at her cross-eyed and kind of walked away. What do you say at that point to that level idiot? You know, like to people that are that gaslit that they can actually say that with a straight face and mean it. Like she really did believe that that argument made sense.
It's I think even discussing COVID and the vaccine with people, it very rarely leads anywhere productive, which is to say that no new ground is broken. I'll put
No,
it that way. People, I didn't even want to bring it up here, but I'll just say quickly. People talk about the heart attack, which the football player whose name escapes me suffered, and they say, "Ooh, it's due to the vaccine," blah blah blah. And others will say that it's impossible, could have been due to the. It's just that player's predicament is a great example of the sort of Rorschach test that the vaccine, any matter related to it, has grown into.
but you know what's hilarious about that? I mean, obviously the situation was tragic.
Mhm.
It's yeah, it's something Hamlin, whatever. It's never happened before that someone took a hit and got that condition on a football field before, right? Usually it happens in soccer or in hockey because it requires a very direct hit to the heart, not a broad one like a football player would do with their shoulder, right? But I would venture to say it's a bit odd that what you think happened to him depends on your political affiliation. That you believe that
Absolutely,
if you're
absolutely.
a Democrat, you believe that it was the hit that gave him the heart attack. If you're a Republican, you believe it was the vaccine that gave him the heart attack. The
Mhm.
thing is, neither of you are heart doctors. So neither of you know what gave him the heart attack. You're just arguing politics where it doesn't belong. So you know what the best thing to probably assume? It's probably a combination of them both. It was probably the vaccine did weaken his heart a little bit. And when he took the hit, it hurt a lot more than it would have. Probably that's a good explanation, and probably it's one that you can get a lot of heart doctors to agree on, unless they know exactly what happened. But nobody's willing to do that. So you literally have half the country who have now become experts in endocarditis or whatever it's called, right? How now they can tell you exactly what causes this condition and why it happened to him. And you have the other who are epidemiologists and virologists who can tell you the reaction that the spike protein had on his blood, which caused his heart to do X, Y, and Z. And it was absolutely the vaccine that did it to him. None of you know that either of those things are true. None of you are heart doctors, so you can't possibly know what causes either of them. And considering you heard of both of them like yesterday, like you can't be an expert on it either, even if you Wikipedia and read the whole thing. So, as I said, best thing you can assume to make yourself happy is that it's probably a combination of them both, and that politics shouldn't determine how you classify an accident.
Yeah, it's I'm not a cardiologist, so obviously I am not someone that has any professional knowledge whatsoever of endocarditis. That being said, I will say that the overwhelming majority of people are in the same boat as me, and obviously that includes Halsey. So we really, all of us, really should just chill out and not impose our views onto this situation. Halsey is absolutely right about that, and this goes for a lot of what you see a lot of what you see taking place with economics. A lot of people automatically claim that what's going on is because a politician or businessman slash woman A did B, therefore C leading on down to Z transpired, and you'll get
It's called
different
a
narratives.
syllogism. If you're looking for
It,
the official word, it's called a syllogism.
Yes, yes, absolutely, and it's just so. I'll put it this way: it's very silly. It's tiresome, but people do use economics as a Rorschach test as well. So the incident with that football player whose name still escapes me.
Damar, no, Damar Hamlin, I think they said. Damar Hamlin. Yeah.
Damar Hamlin. Well, the very unfortunate incident with him is just an example of what often happens with discussions of economics.
What I'm saying is that regardless of your politics, right? We do know these fundamental things. Whatever the strain is that's out now, I don't even know what they're calling it anymore. It doesn't kill you. Unless you were going to die from any disease that you got. If you got a cold, you would die. Same as if you got COVID. I just had it 2 weeks ago. Again, I had felt like I had the flu for a day or two, and then it was gone. Right? There are things about the vax that they didn't tell you when it was being rolled out. Does that mean that it's evil? Who knows? Does that mean that it's good? Who knows? What I'm saying though is that if you don't want to take it, don't take it. And if you do want to take it, then you should take it. But there's one thing we can all agree on. Nobody believes it stops you from spreading it anymore. So there's no legitimate argument you could make that I have to take it to keep you safe. So in doing that, there's no reason for us to even argue. Yes, I saw that silly Jimmy Fallon. I can't even believe that guy's still on TV. Did you see that ridiculous dance he did about the variant?
Did you mean wait? Do you mean Stephen Colbert, that vaccine thing?
No, so that he did that. Then Jimmy Fallon just last week he did. He was talking about the new variant to the tune of Love Shack.
Oh,
Like
no,
I mean,
okay.
to say he looked ridiculous is truly an understatement.
You mean the B-52 song?
Yeah.
Wow. I can imagine how pathetic it was. I don't even want to see it, but I can imagine how pathetic it was. That vaccine thing with Colbert was bad enough. Yeah, late night. I mean, it's not in the realm of. Well, I guess it is in the realm of business. Come to think of it, it's not in the realm of economics, but definitely. I guess it relates to economics. I just keep thinking of the way this stuff branches out. But the late night so-called comedy has just become a total drag in recent years. People could say what they want about Leno and Letterman, but they at least kept things quasi mildly interesting. But now it's basically just a political circle jerk. And it's interesting because folks on the left have their viewership divided between Comedy Central and the networks, and then folks on the right have Gutfeld. So Gutfeld by default winds up the most popular show, even though he's on Fox News, which is something has something of a reputation being for older people, retirees, but yet they have the number one late night comedy show. Quite funny stuff. So yeah, it's interesting. This does tell you something, obviously, about where the market is, and it lets you know that there is an audience out there for something other than what Colbert and Myers and their friends produce. However, Colbert, Myers, and their friends aren't going to stop. I think they believe that they are locked into the audience that they've engendered. And I think that they really don't necessarily care about their ratings all that much now. I think that they're getting paid one way or the other, so they figure they'll just evangelize their political views, and that's that. It's not a good business strategy. I mean, in a way, it's good on a certain level. I have to give them this, that they constantly shore up their base and they pander to that base. There's no other way to shore it up, considering their profession. But it's bad in that they limit themselves to people who are willing to tune in at a certain time, which is less and less people, to a certain program. And they've divided the left leaners up so much that they're beat by this upstart on this network for old people. It's really that there is an instructive lesson here about a business model and the economics which underpin it.
So, and then I got to run in a minute
Sure.
or two, but you know what? It's kind of funny. When you were a kid, did I remember that girl that movie Mean Girls?
Oh yes, yeah, sure.
So I don't remember much about it, but if you ever like think of what is the stereotype of a mean girl, right? They stand around and one of them says, "Oh my God, can you see that skirt she's wearing? She looks like she got it at the Salvation Army." And everyone knows that's not funny, but all her little friends sitting around her laugh at it because, you're supposed to laugh when the mean girl makes a joke.
Mm-hmm.
That's Colbert and Fallon now. Like, they know
Yeah.
what they're saying isn't funny. They just know that everybody, like, if people don't laugh at it, they're saying that they disagree with it. So
Mm-hmm.
when Colbert is just like, oh my God, like, can you believe that person probably voted for Trump? And then the canned laughter starts and you see everybody falling asleep in the audience. Like, those people are supposed to laugh at him because he just made a joke that he would find funny as a mean girl at a party. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not actually funny. Like Gutfeld, I don't particularly like why like first of all I don't like Fox News anyway. Like
Uh-huh.
I've never been into watching Fox News very much. I like Tucker,
Mm-hmm.
but I just kind of watch his opening monologues the next day on YouTube. Like I don't
Mm-hmm.
even watch Tucker, but every now and then, and it's funny. The only time I watch Gutfeld or hear it is because I have something from Tucker on and my hands are wet, and the video ends and it moves on to the next one, and the next one happens to be Gutfeld. The
Mm-hmm.
reason that he is kind of funny is because he still says really offensive things to the other people that are there. Like he calls like he basically like makes like slut jokes at the girls that are there,
Uh,
or like calls them drug addicts or alcoholics or like destitute single moms. Like that kind of stuff is funny, and it just shows that even like a boomer like Gutfeld, who he's not making any like really bad jokes. But if you're not willing to offend someone, it's not going to be funny. And Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Fallon just prove that so hands down.
oh, but they do offend people. They offend people on the right all the time, but they know they get away with it because they're pandering to their base. But at the same time, it's a shrinking base.
Yeah, but they don't offend us. We don't watch it.
But that's good, the worthwhile point. But no, that they do intend to offend. There's no question about that.
Yeah, but I'm saying like the only reason I saw that Jimmy Fallon thing or the Stephen Colbert thing is because people were posting the clip on it on Twitter, and I wasn't laughing with them. I was laughing at them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
Gutfeld, he pisses them off because people find him funny.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they don't like it. They're like, well, wait a minute, why are people laughing? This guy is Adolf Hitler.
it's it's I guess everyone is literally Hitler nowadays. That's the predominant insult among certain person type of person, politically speaking, who doesn't have anything else to say, and so they resort to that. It's sad, it's tiresome, but it's sad, and it's not going away anytime soon.
Mm-mm. No way.
No, it's very it's easy. It's the low hanging fruit, and the low hanging fruit does always find someone to pick it. Anyway, Halsey, I know you do have to go now, but any last, I suppose, insight on the economy or business, anything to share tonight before you vamoose?
I still think it's very important that people start learning things that can get you by in the event that things really go south. Like if you lose your middle management job, if you lose your data entry job, if you lose like your bullshit job where you're making like just enough to survive, if you don't have a skill to fall back on, you could find yourself like in pretty deep shit. So start those things that you consider hobbies, figure out how you can kind of make that into, a side hustle.
Very interesting point, and definitely does not constitute leaving on a high note, but definitely worth thinking about all the same. I do hope there won't be any sort of civilizational collapse, but really, who the hell knows? It's been such a turbulent time, and certainly there is a great deal more turbulence on the horizon. Halsey, thank you very much for stopping by for the first episode of the new show. I think it has gone swimmingly, and it goes without saying, I look forward to chatting with you again in the very near future.
Anytime, man. Anytime. I really enjoy this stuff.
Absolutely. And there's no shortage of anything to discuss when it comes to economics and business. Everyone, thank you for tuning in. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as Halsey and I did. And I hope that you enjoy future episodes because there are a lot more coming. And on that note, I do wish you a great night or day whenever you're watching this. Cheers to you. My only regret is that my glass is empty, but what are you going to do? It's a bit too late now to fill it. So take it easy. Have a great night. Cheers, as I said.